All the objects in this museum come to life at night, and the duty of this night guard is to maintain order and prevent them from leaving the premises. Now, something important to mention is that this guard's life is a mess. Could it be that the chaos in the museum and his job reflect his inner world and the stability he needs to achieve? When Larry arrives at his car in Brooklyn, he finds a ticket and a boot on one of the wheels. He then goes to pick up his son, Nick, at school, but a teacher informs him that Nick already left because classes ended early that day for career day. Larry heads to his ex-wife Erica's house to talk to Nick and ask why he didn't notify him about the event. Erica explains that Nick said he would tell him but probably forgot. Larry greets Dawn, Erica's fiancée, and privately tells her that he might get evicted and have to move to Queens. Concerned, Erica suggests Larry shouldn't spend time with Nick until he achieves more stability. Nick appears, and Larry takes him to a hockey game. During a break, Larry steps onto the rink to give Nick some advice but ends up getting hit by a puck. After the game, Nick confesses he doesn't want to play hockey anymore and aspires to be a stockbroker, inspired by Dawn. Larry tells Nick he thought he loved hockey, but Nick explains that he likes it, although being a stockbroker is his fallback plan. Larry asks where he got that idea, and Nick says he overheard his mom and Dawn talking about Larry. Larry assures him that he feels his big moment is near. Nick asks what will happen if that moment never comes, and Larry only ends up as an ordinary man searching for work. This touches Larry deeply. He then goes to an employment office, where an interviewer reviews his resume. She remarks that she has never seen one like it, but not as a compliment. Larry explains that he invented the snapper, a device for turning lights on and off with a snap, but she can't help him. Compassionately, the woman gives him the address of the Museum of Natural History. At the museum, receptionist Rebecca takes Larry to the office of Cecil, the security guard. Cecil explains that the museum is losing money and will lay off the current 3 night guards, himself, Gus, and Reginald, to hire a new one. Larry hesitates but accepts after Gus insists. As they leave, Reginald asks if they think Larry is the right man for the job, and Cecil responds affirmatively. Cecil gives Larry a tour of the museum, showing him the diorama room with models of Mayan, Roman, and Old West cultures. He also introduces him to Attila the Hun, the Easter Island head, and the African Mammals Hall, where a monkey named Dexter stands out. Finally, they reach the chamber of Pharaoh, where Cecil shows Larry the tomb and a golden tablet, avoiding much discussion about the pharaoh. On Larry's first night, the 3 former guards hand him the keys, a flashlight, and a manual. Before leaving, Cecil emphasizes not to let anything in, or out. Left alone, Larry decides to explore the museum and notices the Tyrannosaurus Rex missing from its place. He hears a noise and sees the dinosaur drinking from the water cooler. Suddenly, the T-Rex chases him, and Larry hides behind the reception desk, which the dinosaur tosses across the room. Larry calls Cecil, who tells him to read the manual. There, he discovers that he must throw a bone to the dinosaur. Finding a giant rib, he throws it, realizing that the T-Rex just wants to play. As he tosses the bone again, Larry notices that the entire museum has come to life: animals, caveman trying to make fire, and the Easter Island head calling him dum-dum and asking for gum. Attila the Hun and his warriors chase Larry to the elevator. On the first floor, he sees Sacagawea behind a glass exhibit. He tries talking to her, but she cannot hear him. Suddenly, a Civil War soldier fires at others, forcing Larry to flee. He reads another instruction: lock up the lions, or they will eat you. In the African Mammals Hall, Larry finds the lions, closes the gate, and runs to some trees as they chase him, barely escaping by locking another gate. The next instruction warns him about a monkey that might steal his keys. Larry discovers that Dexter, the monkey, has the keys. He tries to recover them politely, but Dexter bites him, urinates on him, steals the manual, and tears it apart. Frustrated, Larry runs to the diorama room, where miniature Mayan and Roman soldiers fire arrows at his hand. Fleeing, he enters the Old West exhibit, where tiny cowboys led by Jedediah overpower and tie him up. Jed, their leader, says they are tired of being confined and ties Larry to the train tracks. Ignoring Larry's pleas, the train rushes toward him at full speed but only hits him on the head before derailing. Larry frees himself. As he gets up, he sees a Roman army led by Octavius, who orders an attack with flaming arrows. Suddenly, President Teddy Roosevelt, on horseback, rescues Larry. Teddy explains that the Pharaoh's tablet brings the exhibits to life each night and that Larry's job is to ensure nothing escapes the museum, as they will disintegrate at sunrise. Teddy promises to help him for one night only. As they round everyone up, Teddy watches Sacagawea through binoculars but doesn't explain why. Larry confides in Teddy that he doesn't plan to return the next night. Teddy asks what he used to do, and Larry mentions inventing the snapper. Teddy asks if he also quit that, and Larry explains that he only encountered obstacles. Teddy tells him, "Some are born great, and others have greatness thrust upon them. This is your moment." As dawn approaches, Teddy returns to his exhibit, and everything in the museum returns to normal. In the morning, the former guards arrive and find Larry, who confronts them for not warning him about the museum coming to life. Larry decides to quit, but as he leaves, he runs into his son, Nick, who visits him with Dawn before school. Nick, excited about his father's job, makes Larry promise to give him a tour someday. Inspired, Larry returns to the museum to reclaim his job. The museum director, Dr. McPhee, calls Larry to the diorama room and reprimands him after finding a Roman figure in the Old West exhibit, assuming it was Larry's doing. Larry asks for a new manual, but Cecil suggests that he learn history instead. Larry notices Rebecca leading a group of children and overhears her explaining that the museum was dedicated to Roosevelt, who believed that knowing the past helps prepare for the future. Larry joins the group, and upon hearing Rebecca talk about Sacagawea, interrupts by asking if she was deaf since she didn't hear him the night before. I couldn't help but connect the elements of the film with my area of interest. A natural history museum, like the one in the movie, closely resembles the human mind. Just as a museum preserves fossils and artifacts to reconstruct the history of life and the planet, the mind stores memories and experiences that shape who we are and how we act. In fact, Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, often described himself as an archaeologist of the mind. He established an analogy between the work of an archaeologist and that of a psychoanalyst. Much like an archaeologist excavates to uncover ancient civilizations and goes beyond the visible to understand how those societies lived and thought, the psychoanalyst digs into the human mind, bringing to light repressed memories, desires, and emotions buried beneath. Both share the goal of reconstructing hidden stories to better understand the past and how it continues to influence the present. Another interesting connection between the elements of the movie and psychoanalysis is the idea that, in the story, the museum's objects come to life at night. This can be interpreted as a representation of what happens in dreams. From a psychoanalytic perspective, Freud described dreams as a window to the unconscious, a space where objects from our past, desires, fears, and conflicts come alive because the conscious mind's censorship relaxes. From this perspective, the museum in the movie can be seen as a reflection of Larry's internal world, and his work as a kind of therapeutic process. Just as the museum is in chaos, Larry's life is also in disarray. He feels lost, insecure, and struggles to find stability while trying to set a good example for his son. His job of maintaining order in the museum, preventing unruly objects from causing problems inside and outside the space, mirrors his need to confront his internal disorder. To succeed, Larry must learn about each object and understand its history. Similarly, to maintain our own psychological balance and prevent internal conflicts from spilling over into our external lives, it is essential to explore our internal collection of memories, emotions, and desires. By understanding the origin and meaning of these fragments, we can find stability, integrate them into our personal narrative, and develop more effective tools to face life's challenges and suffering. Larry's challenge to organize and face the chaos in the museum can be seen as his need to confront his own internal disorder. Only by doing so can he achieve stability in his personal life. An annoyed Rebecca asks Larry why he keeps following her. He replies that he just wants to learn and suggests they talk over coffee. She agrees. While they walk, Rebecca shares that she has spent 4 years working on her thesis about Sacagawea, whom she admires for guiding explorers while carrying her baby. Surprised, Larry comments that he couldn't dedicate so much time to one thing. Motivated, Larry begins studying history, reading books, and learning about the museum's exhibits. He discovers that Attila the Hun was feared by the Romans, fascinated by magic, and known for his brutality. His job of maintaining order in the museum, preventing unruly objects from causing problems inside and outside the space, mirrors his need to confront his internal disorder. To succeed, Larry must learn about each object and understand its history. Similarly, to maintain our own psychological balance and prevent internal conflicts from spilling over into our external lives, it is essential to explore our internal collection of memories, emotions, and desires. By understanding the origin and meaning of these fragments, we can find stability, integrate them into our personal narrative, and develop more effective tools to face life's challenges and suffering. Larry's challenge to organize and face the chaos in the museum can be seen as his need to confront his own internal disorder. Only by doing so can he achieve stability in his personal life. An annoyed Rebecca asks Larry why he keeps following her. He replies that he just wants to learn and suggests they talk over coffee. She agrees. While they walk, Rebecca shares that she has spent 4 years working on her thesis about Sacagawea, whom she admires for guiding explorers while carrying her baby. Surprised, Larry comments that he couldn't dedicate so much time to one thing. Motivated, Larry begins studying history, reading books, and learning about the museum's exhibits. He discovers that Attila the Hun was feared by the Romans, fascinated by magic, and known for his brutality. He also researches other objects in the museum online. While studying, he notices a photo of himself and his son on the table. At the museum, Larry prepares for his next shift. Cecil and the other guards say their goodbyes, as they are moving to Florida. Cecil asks for a moment alone, during which Reginald stays behind to make a mold of Larry's key. Larry starts his shift by using a remote-controlled car to keep the T-Rex busy with a bone. He gives the cavemen a lighter to make fire, hands gun to the Easter Island head, and dodges arrows from the Mayan soldiers before closing their exhibit. Larry visits the Roman diorama and hears Octavius giving orders to expand his army. He then goes to the Old West diorama, where Jet is trying to blow up a mountain, explaining they are working on Manifest Destiny. Tired, Larry picks up both Jet and Octavius, promising them freedom in the museum if they behave, otherwise, he will lock them up like the Mayans. Both agree, and Larry moves on. In the African Mammals Hall, Larry orders Dexter to enter a room. The monkey obeys, but when he tries to show off by stealing Larry's keys, he discovers they are fake. Larry, satisfied, locks the door, convinced he has outsmarted him. Then, Larry notices Teddy Roosevelt watching Sacagawea and suggests he approach her to talk. Although Teddy seems encouraged, he hesitates and is too shy to do so. Meanwhile, a man sneaks into Larry's office and plants museum artifacts on his desk before leaving. Later, in Teddy Roosevelt's exhibit, Larry encounters Attila the Hun, who prepares to attack him. Larry distracts him with magic tricks, but when one trick fails, Attila orders his men to capture Larry. Just as they grab him, an elephant charges in and stops them. Larry realizes the animals have escaped their enclosures and that Dexter has the real keys. He chases the monkey to the diorama room, where Romans and cowboys are fighting. Dexter opens a window, and Larry tries to stop him, but a caveman on fire catches his attention. Larry uses an extinguisher to put out the flames and resumes the chase. One of the cavemen notices a bonfire outside, and seeing the open window, he jumps out to join it. Larry finally catches up to Dexter in another exhibit, but the monkey slaps him. They fight until Teddy intervenes with a calm demeanor and retrieves the keys. Larry decides he will not return to the museum. Teddy tries to encourage him not to give up, but Larry insists that not everyone is destined for greatness, saying he's just an ordinary man. Taking his suitcase, he heads for the exit. As he passes a statue of Columbus, it directs him to an open window. Through it, Larry sees the caveman outside just as the sun rises. He rushes to the main door, but it's too late. The caveman disintegrates in the sunlight. Throughout the story, Larry's actions and comments reveal his tendency to seek quick results and give up easily when things get tough. For example, when Teddy asked about his previous work, Larry mentioned that he encountered obstacles and quit. Later, upon hearing Rebecca talk about her 4 years of research, he remarked that he couldn't dedicate so much time to one thing. Similarly, after facing challenges on his first night at the museum, his immediate reaction was to want to quit. This is significant because it reflects something many of us struggle with today. We live in an era where instant gratification is just a click away. With television, smartphones, and social media, we receive quick rewards with minimal effort. This spoils us, making us less tolerant of difficulties and more likely to give up at the first sign of hardship. The paradox is that this habit of constantly seeking the easy way leaves us worse off in the end. We feel empty, purposeless, and without anything truly fulfilling. The things that matter most in life are not obtained instantly or without effort. They require time, dedication, patience, and perseverance. In fact, it is the obstacles that give purpose its meaning. Greatness doesn't exist without challenges, it is by facing them that we discover what we are truly made of. The next morning, Nick and his friends visit the museum, hoping to learn something new from Larry, but they see him being fired by Dr. McPhee due to foam found in the caveman exhibit. Larry doesn't notice Nick's presence, and the kids leave disappointed. Later, Larry convinces Dr. McPhee to give him one last chance. At home, Nick tells Larry he saw him being fired. Larry explains it was a misunderstanding and invites Nick to join him at the museum that night. Nick agrees. At the museum, Larry sees Rebecca and talks to her. She mentions that she's considering abandoning her thesis because she feels she will never truly understand Sacagawea. Larry encourages her not to give up and reveals the museum's secret: everything comes to life at night. Rebecca doesn't believe him and, thinking he's mocking her, walks away. That night, Larry places Nick at the reception desk and warns him that the dinosaur will come to life in seconds, but nothing happens. Nick, disappointed, thinks his father is lying. They soon discover that the tablet has been stolen. As they investigate, they find a cart with the tablet but are confronted by Cecil, Gus, and Reginald, who demand that they hand it over. Larry instructs Nick to rotate the central piece of the tablet to activate its magic. Though hesitant, Nick trusts his father and does it. Then, Larry tells Nick to escape with the tablet. Gus punches Larry, and Cecil knocks him down, explaining that they loved working at the museum because the tablet gave them vitality and energy. When they learned they were being laid off, they plan to steal it and frame Larry. Gus hits Larry again, and the guards go after Nick. Meanwhile, Dexter opens the museum's main entrance, allowing everyone to escape. Cecil catches up to Nick and takes the tablet. Larry tries to defend his son, but Cecil overpowers him, steals his keys, and locks Larry and Nick in the Pharaoh's chamber. Larry calls for Teddy, who arrives but refuses to help, saying that this is Larry's moment to prove himself. Teddy leaves as the statues of Anubis prepare to attack. Larry manages to outsmart the statues and opens the Pharaoh Menra's tomb. The Pharaoh introduces himself, orders the statues to stand down, and thanks Larry and Nick for freeing him. The statues let them out of the chamber, allowing them to continue searching for the tablet. Meanwhile, the museum descends into chaos. In Teddy Roosevelt's hall, Attila the Hun spots Larry and charges at him. Larry decides to confront him and, with the Pharaoh's help as a translator, appeals to Attila's emotional side by addressing his past pain. This earns Attila's trust. To calm the chaos, Larry tries to get everyone's attention but fails until the Easter Island head yells to impose silence. Gus punches Larry, and Cecil knocks him down, explaining that they loved working at the museum because the tablet gave them vitality and energy. When they learned they were being laid off, they planned to steal it and frame Larry. Gus hits Larry again, and the guards go after Nick. Meanwhile, Dexter opens the museum's main entrance, allowing everyone to escape. Cecil catches up to Nick and takes the tablet. Larry tries to defend his son, but Cecil overpowers him, steals his keys, and locks Larry and Nick in the Pharaoh's chamber. Larry calls for Teddy, who arrives but refuses to help, saying that this is Larry's moment to prove himself. Teddy leaves as the statues of Anubis prepare to attack. Larry manages to outsmart the statues and opens the Pharaoh Menra's tomb. The Pharaoh introduces himself, orders the statues to stand down, and thanks Larry and Nick for freeing him. The statues let them out of the chamber, allowing them to continue searching for the tablet. Meanwhile, the museum descends into chaos. In Teddy Roosevelt's hall, Attila the Hun spots Larry and charges at him. Larry decides to confront him and, with the Pharaoh's help as a translator, appeals to Attila's emotional side by addressing his past pain. This earns Attila's trust. To calm the chaos, Larry tries to get everyone's attention but fails until the Easter Island head yells to impose silence. Larry explains the power of the tablet, how it was stolen by the guards, and assigns tasks to everyone to recover it. He gives instructions to the Civil War soldiers, Columbus, and the cavemen, and convinces Jet and Octavius to work together by pointing out that they are not so different. They are both great leaders who want the best for their people. One of the movie's key ideas is that understanding the past prepares us for the future. Listening to Jet and Octavius, it's interesting to compare the Roman Empire with the United States and see how history might foreshadow challenges for America. When Larry first met Octavius and Jed, they argued about expanding their territories. Jed even mentioned manifest destiny. As Larry pointed out, the two are quite similar. The Roman Empire and the United States have been two of the most influential political systems in history, both built on narratives that justified their power and expansion. Rome promoted the idea that its dominance was a divine right and duty, known as Imperium sine fine, an empire without limits. This belief was popularized by Virgil in the Aeneid, an epic poem commissioned by Emperor Augustus to legitimize his rule and give Rome a heroic past and divine mission. In the Aeneid, the hero Aeneas, guided by divine will, flees Troy to found Rome, a civilization destined to bring order and stability to the world. According to this vision, Roman conquests were not acts of aggression but a civilizing mission in barbaric lands. Similarly, American settlers embraced manifest destiny, the belief that they were destined to expand coast to coast. This idea, also rooted in a divine mission, justified westward expansion, the seizure of native lands, and the war with Mexico. Over time, it evolved into the doctrine of American exceptionalism, portraying the nation as uniquely admirable with a duty to lead and redeem the world. This belief has underpinned many of America's international interventions. In both Rome and the United States, we find narratives blending religion, politics, and a sense of mission supposedly for humanity's benefit. However, as the movie suggests, learning from the past also means recognizing the risks of such beliefs. The Roman Empire expanded so much that managing and defending its territories became unsustainable, contributing to its fall. Today, while territorial expansion is no longer an issue, the United States has taken on a global role as a military and economic leader. Its numerous military bases, frequent interventions, and the high costs of its global influence are creating pressures that are already becoming evident. The United States continues to cling to past narratives without questioning their current impact. The future is not guaranteed by past greatness but by the ability to learn from history and adapt to new realities. To face the future, perhaps it's time to rethink the idea of a divine mission and lead with cooperation and cultural respect. As some intellectuals point out, American exceptionalism doesn't reflect reality and is more like a myth. Stephen Walt explains it this way: blind faith in exceptionalism makes it hard for Americans to understand why other countries don't share their enthusiasm for their global dominance. It also frustrates them when others perceive hypocrisy, for example, in the case of nuclear weapons, or when condemning the behavior of others while ignoring their own. Ironically, U.S. foreign policy would be more effective if it abandoned this belief and adopted a more realistic perspective. Believing in a divine mandate is dangerous because it leads to a sense of infallibility and the election of ineffective leaders. What do you think? Does the American political experiment need changes to remain relevant, or is it fine as it is? Back at the museum, Jed and Octavius lead an effort to deflate the tires of the guard's truck, but the air pressure launches everyone except them. Meanwhile, Civil War troops detain Gus, and Columbus, along with the cavemen, captures Reginald. However, Cecil escapes with the tablet in his vehicle. Larry frees Sacagawea, who helps him track Cecil. They discover that Cecil crashed his car and returned to the museum on a horse-drawn carriage. Just as he is about to run over Sacagawea, Teddy Roosevelt saves her, though he ends up splitting in two. While Sacagawea helps Teddy, Jed and Octavius arrive in the remote-controlled car. Larry asks them to use the T-Rex to corner Cecil while he follows on Teddy's horse. Jed maneuvers the car to lead the T-Rex towards Cecil, but the vehicle loses control, flips behind a hill, and explodes. Larry catches up to Cecil and demands that he stop the horses. Cecil explains that they are mail carriers trained to stop only with a specific command. Larry says Dakota, and the horses halt, throwing Cecil off the carriage. Larry retrieves the tablet and turns Cecil over to Attila the Hun's tribunal. Larry and Achman Rai use the tablet to bring everyone back into the museum. Teddy returns to his exhibit for repairs. Larry calls Rebecca, and when she arrives, she begins to believe his story after seeing everything come to life. She meets Sacagawea and walks away with her to talk. Larry and Achman Rai check to ensure everyone is back in their places, but Jed and Octavius are missing. Larry fears the worst, but both of them arrive climbing the stairs, surprising everyone. Teddy hopes to see Larry again the next night, though Larry is unsure if he wants to continue working due to the chaos in the lobby. Before dawn, Teddy tells Nick that his father is a great man, to which Nick responds, "I know." Larry goes to Dr. McPhee's office, where they see news coverage of the previous night, including dinosaur tracks and caveman drawings in the subway. Dr. McPhee fires Larry, asking for his keys and flashlight. However, upon seeing the museum full of visitors, he changes his mind and reinstates Larry. During career day at Nick's school, Nick proudly talks about his father's job as the night guard at the Museum of Natural History. That evening, the exhibits celebrate with a party. Everyone gets along, and Nick rides the T-Rex while Jed and Octavius guide him in their toy car. Larry spins his flashlight, hooks it to his belt, and snaps his fingers to turn off the lights. Ultimately, the film invites us to connect more deeply with our past, not just to understand it but to learn from it. Those who ignore or choose to forget their history, whether as individuals or as a society, are doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over. This is especially relevant in today's world, where we see the resurgence of ideas and narratives that once caused chaos, division, and tragedy, claiming countless lives. In our personal lives, similar patterns often emerge. We find ourselves trapped in cycles, repeating painful situations or making mistakes that keep us stuck. Sometimes we aren't even aware of how the past continues to influence our decisions and emotions, preventing us from moving forward. Following the movie's premise and this analysis, it's essential to look back at the past, both collectively and personally, and reflect on it with care. Only then can we better understand our current situation and prepare for the future. Just as Larry managed to establish order and avoid chaos by learning the history of the museum's objects and understanding their significance, we, too, can dedicate time to exploring our inner museum and reflecting on our own history. By doing so, we can find clarity and give new meaning to our experiences. Both as individuals and as a society, we have the opportunity to learn from our past, build a more meaningful future, reduce suffering, and, most importantly, create hope.